Can you hear me well? Great. All right, I would like to make the session as useful for all of you as possible. So just come in front, and if you want to talk or if you want to look on your computers, you can go out. And anyone who wants to participate, you can come further to the front so I can hear you and interact with you. All right? Great, thank you. So, as Cynthia said, I just arrived from San Francisco, literally. I just got off the plane, and I'm supposed to talk about networking. And as I mentioned earlier, I actually didn't know that I was supposed to give that specific talk on networking, but I do have some experience that I can share on it, and I hope it's going to be useful for you. Have been living in various places around the world, from the US to Russia to Bangladesh, various places in Europe. Have mostly been running for non-profit companies, have raised money, recruited teams, etc. pp. I've done sort of built the Sandbox network in San Francisco, part of various other organizations, including the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, which is representing about 380 companies. It's CEOs of companies in the Valley. It's about $1 trillion in revenue, and about 3 out of 5 jobs in the Valley. So that's kind of some of the things that I bring into the conversation. So I've lived in a lot of different places, had to network my way around. I wouldn't say I'm enjoying networking just for networking, but I think I've done an okay job in doing it to reach sort of certain goals in order to turn the ideas that I had into reality. Now, for the next 20 minutes, all of this experience is at your exposure. So I will start asking questions very soon. And before going into it, first of all, I want to ask a few people, why do you want to do, like, why networking? Why is it even like relevant? Like, why do you need to network? What do you think? Can we have a microphone?
Pass it down.
Okay, anyone?
Who was it? Okay.
Well, I think that it's important, for instance, for a startup to start testing its assumptions the earliest possible. So the more people one can talk to, the better, to see if one thinking is correct, if it's not, to start building relationships, future clients, investors, it works.
Okay, I think that's a great example. Now, do you have a startup?
No, I'm in a venture capital.
Okay, you're in venture capital. Great, even better. In venture capital, that's your job, to go around the network. Well, for a startup, this is I think a really interesting question, because a lot of young entrepreneurs, as they go out and they start to start the company and they talk with everyone about their idea or not, there's a fine balance, I would say. Like, if who of you here is an entrepreneur, and who? Great, few people, and who is sort of just getting started, has maybe first prototype, is very early right now. Few people. All right, who's interested in starting a company? Okay, few people, great. So, there's a fine balance. What I see many times is that there's kind of the one extreme of entrepreneurs that go out and they say, all right, now I need to network the hell out of whatever place I'm in, and they spend all of their time networking but don't produce anything. And then you have the other extreme of people that sit inside the whole day and they work and work and work. They kind of lose track of what's happening around them. That balance is difficult to get right many times. But certainly most of the time, I would say the rule of thumb is you only want to network if there's a very specific reason, if there's something that you're trying to reach, but not just for randomly building relationships. It can be sometimes good, but many times, for example, to raise money, one of the things that was one of the first advice that I got coming to the Valley from one of my current investors is said, as long as you don't raise money, don't talk to investors. The only thing that will happen is that you will become kind of a touched object in a store that no one wants to buy, because everyone knows about it, everyone has already talked about it, all the thrill, everything is like gone away, and you will have a much harder time raising money. So as long as you don't raise money, don't talk to investors. And that's something that in some way is very counterintuitive, because a lot of entrepreneurs, as they come to the Valley, for example, or to like in any other place, they constantly think about raising money. So they think they need to start building relationships and schmooze around with VCs or angel investors. And in the end of the day, they might know a lot of these people, but these people will not invest just because they think you're a nice guy, right? They will invest because you have something great, because you have created results, because you have tons of traction, because you generate revenue, because you have an amazing technology. And this is why. And these kind of things you don't reach by talking to a lot of investors. If you have something great, people will invest. And it's not, then you need to work hard to maybe get to the connections or get to the right people. But it will be very targeted work, and you will spend a lot less time doing what is necessary than if you, before this, kind of go around and just try to talk randomly to investors that might not even be the right ones for your kind of company. All right, great. What are some other reasons why you would network? Anyone else? Here.
To share and acquire knowledge.
Yeah, to share and acquire knowledge. Great. I think that's, again, for kind of entrepreneurs or anyone who's here, to share and acquire knowledge is a great reason to network. And it requires to have a certain mission, and it requires to know what you want. I, for example, spent some time in Bangladesh running a nonprofit, and I didn't know anyone, but in a very short time I was able to get to know a lot of people and acquire a lot of knowledge that helped me to direct the work that we were doing with the nonprofit. And it's amazing how when you're open, you learn many things that people who've been there for many years never learned. There's this one example that I will quickly talk about. They say, when I arrived, they said that Bangladesh is getting flooded more and more and more, and you have all these, the floodings take sometimes up to 2 to 3 months longer than before, and all the crops get destroyed in Bangladesh. People die from hunger. You have cholera breaking out, etc. And when I asked, why did this happen, most of the international community say, "Well, it's global warming. The reason is global warming. It's more meltwater is coming down, etc." And as I was networking my way through the government and a lot of the local people, what turned out to be the real reason is two. First, India built a dam that created sort of huge influxes of water coming in, so the water couldn't go into the ground as fast. Was one reason. The second reason was that the international community had built a road in parallel to the coastline that worked as a dam, didn't let the water flow into the ocean. And that was really the major reason why the floodings have been going longer. Now, the reason the international communities built the street in this way was simply because they didn't network and they didn't talk to the local people, but they just came in kind of thinking they know what to do. So I guess acquiring knowledge is another way of networking. What else? Huh?
The other.
Sorry, say it again. Being
of value.
being of value to whom?
Being of value.
What are you doing? What's your occupation?
I'm kind of an entrepreneur. I don't have an occupation so far.
Okay.
I can call myself a brand evangelist.
Okay, so you're going out there and you try to like find an occupation, or what's the? I mean, would you like to work with a company and?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. So anyone's looking for someone to help evangelize their company? You can. What's your name? George. All right. So you can go to George and talk to him afterwards. Yeah, great. Of course, networking is a way to go out there and meet people. I think, and generally we kind of accept that like networking is something that is useful and that is important. Everyone should be working on it. And networking means that, in the evening after you've worked the whole day and you're tired, you still go to your friend's event or to some kind of pitch event or a conference. Even though you don't want to at all, you go there because in the end of the day you might find someone like George that you will hire for your company. So networking many times is something that is not necessarily the most pleasant. It's work. It means that you have to go out there and you have to talk to a lot of people. Some people enjoy that, some people don't. I sometimes prefer to I guess be a bit more introverted and not to be out there the whole time. So and I think that's true for a lot of people, especially in the tech community, that going out there and talking to a lot of people can be very tiresome, but it's something that you have to do, or you hire someone like George who can do it for you to evangelize your company. I think there's a few lessons learned for me networking. I think one of the most important ones is that that you need to know what you want, and that you understand the social dynamics of how you can get there. I think networking, in the end of the day, is almost, there's an art to it and there's a science. There's an art in caring for people and being able to connect with people, and there's a science in knowing who to talk to and how to target your energy. For example, going back to the fundraising example, one of the things that I usually give advice to entrepreneurs who are in the early fundraising period is you should focus all of your energy initially only on finding other entrepreneurs who started similar companies like you and have received money, who have received funding. Go only target all of your energy on those. Try to get their feedback on your pitch, and then try to involve them into how your pitch develops over time, get them invested into what you're doing, and then have them introduce you to their investors. This introduction is probably the strongest introduction that you can get out of all introductions to investors, because most of the time, once an investor is emotionally invested into an entrepreneur, they will really trust that introduction coming from this person, and value their kind of critical evaluation of your company. As you're doing this, you will see that you will get a very high success rate, and you will be able to build momentum very quickly in your fundraising. And then the second best introductions you can get is from people who've actually invested in you. Bad introductions usually are introductions from someone who's not an entrepreneur, who's not a founder, to investors. They're usually meaningless. Some people say you should talk to lawyers, they can give introductions. Usually those are also not very strong. Introductions from investors to investors, if they don't invest in you, they're also meaningless pretty much, because the investor that will receive the introduction will always think, well, why didn't this guy invest? Why does he want to invest me to invest if he didn't invest? So, understanding that kind of simple principle of reaching out to very specific people that can help you to get where you want to get is really important. And there's a lot of kind of thinking that you can do on this before you actually get started. Then, of course, there's an art to it, and there's some serendipity, and you might run into someone who will fund your company on the street, and you have a casual conversation, and suddenly they will say, "Oh, I invest in you." These kind of things can happen, but they're much less likely to happen. Even though I guess everyone should be open for those. I had those moments where I found for example, a great hire that I just made is someone that I literally ran into, who was CTO of a company in Germany for 7 years and did amazing job there. I ran into him, and now he's working for my company. Great hire, but it was completely serendipitous. And before meeting him, I was very much feeling like, okay, I'm going to waste my time, and it's not going to go anywhere. And it turned out to be some of the best spent time in a long while. So it can go both ways. Anyways, what else? What are some other reasons to network, or what are some questions that you might have in terms of advice or input that I can give? Great.
Hi.
Yeah.
Quick question. You landed in Bangladesh and other places, so what is the first thing you look for if you don't know the culture? Do you usually let your own culture overlap the culture that you're visiting? How do you do that? What is your first thing you do?
I think it's really important to be completely, to throw your expectations out of the window and be completely open. Just let yourself kind of go with the flow in any given, new culture. I think I was really, really shocked coming to Bangladesh. I found a lot of people who were, running businesses there, nonprofits. Almost none of these people, with very, very few exceptions, interacted in any way with people on the ground, because they were simply overwhelmed because of cultural differences, because of the heat, because of the amount of people, and they would hide in sort of international clubs that reminded you very much kind of a colonial feel. So making that leap and actually throwing yourself into people, like local people there, is something I guess that takes a certain kind of mental disposition or something. I don't know, but I ended up we ended up living in a huge villa of a guy that we met randomly, who gave us his house, and then second day we had dinner with the cousin of the president, and then next day we sat together with head of the government, and we at the same time started meeting with people who were like on the street, rickshaw drivers, young people who were trying to make a difference by setting up dental camps around Bangladesh. So it's just kind of being relentless and being very open in trying to connect with people and have a very strong mission. I think what is really important, at least from my experience, is if you have a purpose and if you have a direction in what you want to do, people will help you and people will be interested to engage with you and introduce you to people, and you will very, very quickly find your way around. If you don't have a mission, you don't know what you want to do in life, then most likely nothing will ever happen. So I think that's, even if the mission is very short term and it might be, a week-long mission or it might be a month-long mission, just having that mission makes a huge difference. All right, we have 4 more minutes for questions. Any more? I hope it wasn't too boring. Any more questions? Insights, advice that I can give in terms of for your fundraising for here?
So, question being regarding the Startup Genome Project.
Sorry, say it again.
The question being
Yeah.
regarding the Startup Genome ranking that
Yeah.
you have developed for
Yeah.
several cities.
Yeah.
So, as far as I know, Lisbon is still not in that list.
Yeah.
Is there a reason for that, or is it something that you guys working on for the next edition?
So,
Thank you.
besides being here right now and speaking, I'm also running a company called Compass. And one of the things that we have been doing is we publish various different reports looking at success and failure of startups and different ecosystems globally and how they compare. And if you don't know about it, you can Google for startup ecosystem report and you'll find it. The question was with regard to why Lisbon is not within the top 20 startup ecosystems that we ranked globally. I think conferences like this help to get Lisbon on that list. People many times ask me, what is the one ingredient that makes an ecosystem flourish? Like what is the one thing we have to do? And of course, there's many, many different things. Some things can be completely random. Some things are very specific, such as availability of money. But there is one thing that is the foundation of all of these ecosystems. And this foundation is essentially talent and the connection between these talents. And there's a very beautiful network graph that one of my investors showed me recently. And it essentially compared the networks of different ecosystems globally. And you had Boston with a few kind of black dots. You had one dot with one VC community, another one with early stage VCs, and then you have some lawyers, some consultants, some entrepreneurs here, some entrepreneurs there. And that's pretty much how every single ecosystem looked like. Every single ecosystem kind of had these different dots. The one ecosystem that really stood out to be very different is Silicon Valley, just being one big black dot. And I think that speaks very much about kind of the magic of what makes the Valley drive and why the innovation ecosystem works so well is because everyone is connected with everyone, and there's very little sort of in-group, out-group behavior, but there's very fluid connections, and these connections, these networks, essentially serve as proxies for trust, for fast communication, for reducing the transaction cost, for being able to hire people very quickly, for being able to find investors very quickly, for being able to find a co-founder very quickly if you're very early, for being able to find early customers, people that you can sell to very quickly. These things work because you have these very, very interconnected groups of people. And I think that's what these conferences like yours that you're organizing here can really help to do. They can really make a difference in connecting people from a lot of different areas and help to, help them to create value together. So, and in that sense, I think if I have to pin it down to what will bring this one to be in the top 20, I think things like this can make a difference. Initiatives that can bring more talent, more international talent to this one, I think will make a huge difference. Startup Chile was a very low-cost program that has done an amazing difference to Santiago and has put Santiago on the map of ecosystems within a very short amount of time. The one initiative they did is essentially they just got, I think, about 1,000 companies that they paid $40,000 to move for 6 months to Santiago and to start a company there, to hire people locally. There's one company right here, Bubbleverse. They went to Startup Chile, and as part of the time that they would spend there, they would also have to do some kind of community work and kind of inspire the local community, and you know, beyond inspiring the local community, getting the local community excited about startups and entrepreneurship, and getting people to be employed by those companies, they also connected Santiago to the global entrepreneurship scene. Something that makes a huge difference, because at the end of the day, every single ecosystem for itself can be strong, but it's nothing if it's not connected to the global network of startup ecosystems. Because in the end of the day, you're never going to build your company in just one place. You're going to build it in many different places. You might have investors from the various places. You might hire people from various places. You might have multiple offices. It's more and more common that you have a coexistence between multiple places. So that's really important. I think that's probably also, you know, one area where Lisbon can still improve on, to be more connected with other global startup hubs. And again, this conference is sort of taking one step and making a difference here. All right, I think I'm finished. I'm out of time, and now we're going to go to startup pitches. All right, I hope this was a little bit helpful.